Hi everybody, welcome back. We're going to continue on now with our project. What we need to do basically is get all the parts of our template all arranged into the upper right hand corner of our UV grid. Now there's a couple of different ways we can do this. There's one tool called Layout which allows us to kind of automate the process partially, and then the other method is to actually just do it manually using the Move, Rotate and Scale tools. And we're probably going to do both methods for some of these parts. So I'm going to start off with the label for the can, or for the bottle I should say. So what we need to do is select this. So I'm going to come up to the Move UV Shell tool just here, and I'll click on the label object just here. Oops, getting a little bit stuck. There we go. So you can see here it's selected the label on the bottle, and I'm going to come up to the polygons menu in the UV texture editor and down to layout, and I'm going to go into the options for that. Okay, so what I have here basically is an option, layout objects. So if I've got multiple objects selected, you know, for example the bottle and the lid and so on, I can set this to lay out each of those objects as though it was treating them all as a single object, and it would space them all out accordingly. And that's where it would be non-overlapping. Or you can set it out per each individual object, and that would be where it would overlap all of these pieces on top of one another in here. What we want to try and do is get them all into this corner without overlapping any of them. So I'm going to leave it at per object for now. It's only a single piece, so I only need, I can just leave that as it is. I'm going to move down here, and the main option I want to change is the rotate value. I don't want the software to automatically rotate this by itself to try and fit it in. I want to basically keep it in this orientation. If you set it to 90 degrees, basically it will possibly flip it sort of sideways and then try and fit it in that way, which I don't want. And if you set it to free, it can pretty much just rotate it randomly at any angle to try and fit it into this corner. So I'm going to go with none. Further down here, we've got this spacings preset. What this is going to do is it's going to keep a gap around the object inside this corner of the grid. When you're using multiple objects and laying them out, keeping this value above 0 basically means that the objects won't touch when they're arranged. And that's pretty important. You want to try and keep these all individual and with no overlaps anywhere. So what we'll do is just keep these settings sort of as you see them here, and I'll just hit Layout UVs. And you can see what happens is that it moves the selected UV objects, or the selected shell, into the grid. And what it's trying to do is make this object as big as it can without stretching it to fit the boundary of this corner of the grid. So what it's done essentially is, in this case it's shrunk it a little bit, but it's only shrunk it enough so that the ends at either side here just fit inside the grid. If we zoom in on this, you can see it's left a little gap, and that's what that 0.3 value was. So it's kind of shrunk it down so it just fits inside the grid. So that's the label position. So now what I want to do is basically deselect this. So I'm going to right click and hold on the object and select object mode, and then just click in an empty spot in the grid. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is I basically want to do the same thing again, but with the bottle, the main body of the bottle. So I'm going to click on the Move and Move UV Shell tool, and I'm going to click on the bottle, and that basically has selected that whole object. Okay, I'm going to do the exact same thing again. So I'm going to come up to the polygons menu and down to Layout, and I'm just going to click this time, and you can see there that that's moved that in. Now, unfortunately, you can see that it's actually stripped parts off the object and broken sections of it apart, which is a little bit of a hassle. from what I'm looking at here, it looks like it's basically separated the inside and the outside of the object. So just to kind of have a look at that, you can see here that there's holes just here, and there's also a gap just here. Those holes are where these polygons were. In order to see which part of the model that they were on, what I'm going to do is right click and hold and select face mode and just select some of those polygons. And if I come over here and press F, it will zoom to those polygons, and then I can press this little X-ray button and we can see where they are. So those are just on the outside of the bottleneck, basically. So I don't necessarily want those to be separate. They should really be up in here. So what I can do is, if I come back into here and just click, if I select edge mode by right clicking and selecting edge, and I click on the edges around the outside of one of these holes, I can then press the move and sew button just here. What this will do, it'll take the polygon from wherever it is. You can see that it's the matching polygons just here, highlighted. What it'll do, it'll move it up to here and then actually kind of connect it back in. So if I press move and sew, you can see that it jumps back into place. And I can do that for all of the ones that have a gap. So move and sew. And in this case there's 3 missing, but they're all kind of connected together. Move and sew. Now, where you get gaps like this, where there's an open edge, you don't want to select this outside edge over here, or these ones. And the reason for that is that because that's a side edge, that's actually connected back to this side over here. So basically what's happened is the bottle's been sliced sort of from the top down to the bottom and then peeled open. And the sides, at this side and at this side, are where they actually join together, where it's been split. So you need to make sure that you don't select a polygon edge on the side. You just want to select these ones sort of here. So you can just press move and sew and they'll jump in. So there's another one down here that I noticed before, just here. So we'll grab those and move and sew those. Now, I did notice it before as well, there's some smaller ones like this. So what we need to do is look for those as well. And I think some of them are in here. If you're having trouble finding them, what you can actually do is if you draw or make a selection around them here, you should be able to see the lines selected over here. Some of them are there. If you press F, it'll actually zoom out to the extent. So this is sort of in this bottom corner. The other one's going to be up sort of this area somewhere. There it is there. So this polygon edge should actually be in there. I think, yeah, that should be in there. So you can just hit move and sew. Now you can see there that that whole top piece jumped down. I'm going to undo that for a second. Let's have a quick look. We'll just go edit, undo. I don't want this top piece to actually jump down. Okay, you can see that this edge here that I've got selected actually is up here. So what's happened is that's flipped around and moved. I don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to do is hold control down and deselect this one here. Now this one will stay selected and the corresponding edge down here will stay selected. So if I move and sew that, this piece will jump up into here and connect like that. Alright, it's a bit of a tricky process, but basically what you want to do is try and get all of these pieces all connected together. So I'm going to grab all of those just there, and they're out of this gap here, so I can move and sew those in without any issues. And then these ones here finally are going to be along the top. Some of them are here. I can see that little orange line there. One of them is at the top here. And if one is at this top piece where this gap is, there might be another one along the top up here, maybe. Can't see one, so we might be okay. Alright, I'll try moving and sewing those. Yeah, okay, so we're okay. So we've basically got the outside of the bottle, which is this piece, and we've got the inside of the bottle, which is this piece. Now I don't necessarily need to keep them together. Okay, really I want to try and get this piece here as big as possible because we can put a bump map onto that to make the sort of the outside of the bottle look like it's got little dents and things in. But the inside, we don't really need to have that effect on there. So what I can do is actually take this whole top piece that's been separated, and I can move that off to the side for a minute, and then take the bottom piece and just redo the layout for that. So what I'm going to do with this piece selected is just come back up to polygons and back down to layout. Okay, and you can see that that's scaled up. Now, for some reason, it keeps separating these pieces out, which it shouldn't do. So I'm just going to undo that for a second because I don't want to spend tons of time re-gluing them all back together. This is one of the issues with using this manual tool, is that it's sometimes it does these odd things. I'm just going to go back into layout for a second and click on that. I want to see if there's anything that will allow pieces to basically disconnect from one another. Possibly it could be this separate shells. Everything else pretty much stays as is. I'll try and see. I'll see what happens if I have that switched off. So if I apply that, yeah, you can see there that it's I don't have any of those little extra pieces anymore. So just changing this to off stops the whole thing snapping apart. So basically I just want this piece. Now technically, if you didn't want to use this layout tool, if you're having issues with this tool, what you can do, if I just jump back here for a second, what you can do is just select them all like this. This is UV mode, by the way, so right click UV mode, just select them all, grab the move tool, just sort of put it in the middle of the grid like this, and then grab the scale tool and use the yellow square in the middle and click and drag. Now when you're dragging to the right. Make sure that you're not accidentally grabbing this handle here and doing that. Okay, we don't want to stretch it like this. Okay, you need to make sure you've got the yellow square in the middle. And all you do is just scale it up until the top and bottom touch the top and bottom of the grid like this. And then just use the move tool and sort of move it over to the side. Now we might not leave this big for the time being because what we need to do is get the rest of the objects in, so we might actually have to kind of shrink that down a bit. Plus we've got the label in the bottom already, so what I'll do in a minute is actually select everything. So I'll just tap my space bar, I'll right click and hold, select object mode, and just click and drag across all the objects again, so I've got everything selected. So I can see down here I've got the label. I've got the label at the bottom here. So what I'm going to do is grab the bottle piece, which is this, with the move UV shell tool, and I'll just scale this down again and use the move tool as well, and just keep moving and scaling until you can get this piece kind of sitting above the label without it touching. Now it's important with these that basically you don't want to have any of these parts hanging out of the grid like this, or out of the side here. They all have to fit inside this upper right hand corner of the grid. Alright. If you turn this button on, just here, display image on and off, okay, the corner of the grid that has the picture in it, alright, that's the corner that they have to be in. Alright, you don't want to have them down here or over here. You can turn that button off, or if you turn this one on it kind of dims it, but generally I turn the picture off because it really does make it difficult to see. So we just want to kind of get this right over towards the edge as close as we can get, and we just want to sort of have it scaled as big as we can get while still leaving a little gap in between all of these different shells. Okay. Now I'm not really going to worry about this piece because it doesn't really need it's not going to have a texture applied to it, it's just going to have clear plastic applied to it. These two pieces don't really need to be very big at all, there's no image going on those. The only other parts that have images is this strip just here, and this piece might have a label put on it. This is the top of the lid. So what I'm going to do is basically take this piece and this piece, which are the bottom of the bottle and the thread. Okay, so I'm going to grab the thread, I'm going to move it basically over the top of here, like this. And I might just, let's have a quick look. Just so it's easier to select, I'm going to grab the scale tool, and I'll scale this up a little bit, just so it fits in the middle, like this. And then what I'll do is select all of them. Okay, so I've got the Move UV Shell tool turned on. Select all 3 of those pieces, and then grab the scale tool. Actually, just before you grab the scale, just move these down, kind of put them in this sort of empty spot up here, and then grab the scale tool and scale those down as well. Now with these, you can kind of make them pretty small, because we don't really need to apply an image to that piece. There's nothing that we have to paint or create a texture for in there, like a label. So they don't really have to be very big, and we can just kind of pop those in the corner. So those are really just going to have clear plastic put on them, in the same way that this is. So we'll do the same thing with this. We'll grab the Move UV Shell tool, click on this inner piece of the bottle, move it across over here, and then grab the scale tool, and we'll scale this down like this, and then just kind of move it into a position where it's sort of out of the way. So like with this one, I might pop that there like that, leave a little bit of a gap, and then maybe grab these and bring them across to this side. So we just want to arrange them in a nice kind of tidy manner. Okay, so we've got the main bottle, main outside of the bottle, we've got the label for the bottle, and we've now got the lid. So I want to keep this piece pretty big, I want to keep this piece pretty big as well. So with this piece, what I'll do is I'll grab the Move UV Shell tool, and the longest direction here of the areas that I've still got left empty, I can probably fit this piece in this corner up here to try and keep it as big as possible. So what I'll do is I'll rotate this around by using either of these 2 rotate buttons. So what I'll do is I'll click this one and then click it again. It rotates 45 degrees every time you click it. So then I can move this up here like this, and then grab the scale tool and scale it down. Now don't forget, I'm scaling this, I'm not stretching it. It's really important that you don't kind of, do that or that. What you want to do is scale it so it just gets bigger in both directions at the same time. So we'll just scale this around and kind of fit it into one of these gaps. So I'll probably put it about there. Okay, so finally these 2 pieces. So this one's pretty important. This can have a label applied to it. So what we'll do is we'll bring this into here and then grab the scale tool, and we'll shrink this down. And what we want to do with this one is try and make it as big as possible without it overlapping like this. So it can't overlap here, here, or over here. So make it a tad smaller, like that, and then grab the Move tool and drag it down, kind of squeeze it into that gap. So if you can see there's a little gap on either end or either side. Alright, so avoid putting things like this where they're overlapping one another. Keep a little gap. Alright, so the final couple of pieces, basically we can take these and just shrink them down and fit them up into this gap. Now they're more or less the same size, so I'm just going to pop them next to one another like this. And this is just so I can kind of scale them together. I'll move them up into this section here, and then just zoom in like this. I'll tap my space bar and go full screen with this, just so I can make this bigger for you guys to see. And grab the scale tool and scale them down like this. Now the actual better setup for these is going to be diagonal, so I'm going to pop one of them there like that, and then I'll grab the Move UV Shell tool again and just click off an empty spot and then click back on this one. Oops, now looks like we've got a bit of an issue with this. This piece here, when I'm clicking it, you can see bits are snapping off it. What I might need to do for a minute is grab this one and just move it out of the way, and that's because it's overlapping. What I might need to do here is, in this case, because these pieces are snapping off as individuals, what I need to do is reconnect all these edges together. So I'm going to turn this tool off by clicking on the selection tool. I'm going to right click on the object and hit edge mode, and then drag a box just across the middle here to select these edges. Okay, I'm then going to just zoom out a minute and just make sure there aren't any other edges selected anywhere else on the other objects, which there aren't. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click the Move and Sew button, and basically what it's done is connected those together. So if I grab the tool now, you can see that that piece is all one. Now the issue here clearly is that this ring has also completely disconnected. I'm not too sure how it's managed to do that, because usually it wouldn't, but as you can see, it happens now and then. I'll just use undo to get that object back into the center. There we go. Alright, so what I'm going to do is basically merge all of these together using the Move and Sew. However, when I select them, I'm going to have to make a deselection over here. So I'm going to right click, select edge mode, and I'm going to drag a box just across that piece, like that. Now over here, it's a little bit hard to see, but basically what's happened is it's selected this edge running all the way down along this entire strip of polygons, all the way down here. So what I need to do is deselect those. So I'm going to click and drag with the control key held down, like that, and it'll deselect. And you'll see that some of the polygons over here around the outside edge deselect as well. That's fine. So once I've done that, I'm going to click, this time I think I might just hit this button here, which is Sew the selected edges, like that. Now that technically should join these together without moving anything over. All right. To see if that's worked, I'll just turn on the Move and Sew, the Move UV Shell tool. Click this button and then move it, and you can see there that there's nothing left behind. So that has all become one piece now, which is what I wanted. So you can see there that the UV process sometimes can actually not work exactly the way it should, and you can get little unexpected results here and there. So with this one, I'm just going to kind of squeeze it in there. I'll click on the lid sides and bring that back over. Just kind of squeeze it back into that gap. So that's basically the template set up and ready to go. So I've got the bottle, and that's going to have like a grayscale bump map placed on it if we want to have kind of like bumpy surfaces on there. This is the top of the cap, so I can put a label on there, like a logo or something. This is the sides of the cap, so I can put little a bump map on there as little lines, and what that'll do is kind of make those little kind of grippy ridges on the sides of the cap. And then this is the main label for the object, and this is where we will put our label design. So basically now what we need to do is just kind of clean up this a little bit and export it. So I'll just tap the spacebar and come back over to my perspective view. So what I want to do here is just right click, select object mode, drag a box across everything, and I'm going to turn the transparency, this X-ray button off. And if I come up here to the channel box, okay, some of these objects might have a history in them, okay? Some of them might, like this one, the bottle has a history. And a lot of these are like Move and Sew functions we've done in here. What I need to do is delete the history. So just to be on the safe side, I'm going to grab everything like this, and I'm going to come up to Edit, Delete by Type, History. Now if I don't do that, and any of these objects have any kind of UV history in them, if I animate this object doing something, potentially the UV template will completely scramble up and the textures won't work anymore once they're actually applied. So it's really important to remember, after you've done your UV template like this, you need to delete the history on the object again, so that it's all kind of locked in place. Alright, so that's done. Now what we need to do is export this. So I'm going to right click and hold over here in the editor, and I'm going to select UV, and I'll drag a box across the entire UV template, everything in there. Now this is still turned on, so I'm going to turn that off, because sometimes that causes problems when you select an object. And I come up to the polygons menu, right down the bottom to UV snapshot, and click on it. And this is where we export our template from. So you can see here it's reading the project folder, so it's going into my TVC bottle folder, into images, and it's calling this file OutUV. What you need to do is rename this. Every template you export, it calls OutUV by default, and sometimes it might accidentally overwrite other templates that you've done if they're in the same project folder. So I'm just going to rename that by removing the OutUV, and this one I'm going to call bottle, and then capital UV. Or what you can do is actually go, usually what I do, sorry, is go template. So this is my UV template for the bottle. We can then set the size X and Y, and that should be 1024 by 1024. Keep aspect ratio needs to be on, so it's a square image, so both numbers should be the same. The color value you can leave white, and the image format, change it to a PNG, a PNG. What this is going to do is make the background transparent in the image, so when you drag it into Photoshop, you can put it over the top of all your image layers for your label and your other textures, and you can see this wireframe picture over the top of your label, so you can line everything up and make sure that it's all within the areas it needs to be. Okay, so that's basically it. The only other one is the UV range, and that has to be set to normal 0 to 1. What that's going to do is look in this top corner of the grid between the 0 and 1 values, and it's going to export any selection in there as the template. If this is set to anything else, it'll be looking sort of in other areas of the grid, and it won't be able to find these selections. So all you do is you press OK. And at the bottom of the screen, you'll get a little message saying it's saved that file. So if we take a quick look in the project folder, here's the project folder. If we go into the images folder just here, open that up, you'll see the template is there, and you can open that up and have a quick look at it. So this is the main bottle. We've got the label down here, the sides of the lid, the top of the lid, and then sort of all the little extra bits that we don't really need. So this is the file that we're going to open up in Photoshop, and we're going to be doing that in the next video. So I'll see you then.